Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about astrology and Chris Christie testing positive for the coronavirus COVID-19. This seems to be going on and on. There's innumerable cases of this. As many of you may have heard, Donald Trump had recently gotten the coronavirus, and also Kellyanne Conway, prolific NFL player. Cam Newton has recently tested positive for the coronavirus COVID-19. Chris Christie now has been tested positive for this. First thing I want to do, of course, I want to offer my prayers to the family and friends of Chris Christie right now, because coronavirus can be potentially perilous. I don't know the exact morbidity rate. I know it's rather low. I think on average it's like under 5%. But the thing is, you have to factor in that Chris Christie is an older person. He's 58 years old. And this is not to be derogatory, but his weight, he does appear to be overweight. And you put these things in together, and he's definitely at a higher risk and susceptibility for this. Now, again, I'm going to talk about some natal placements and transits in this chart that may have been tied in astrologically to him getting this. Now, the first thing I wanted to say, well, he's a Sun in Virgo, Moon in Sagittarius, and Scorpio rising. Now, out of those three, what I consider the main proponents in one's astrological chart, the Scorpio rising is obviously what stands out to me in terms of susceptibility to the coronavirus. Scorpio can be rising can be have certain susceptibility to the coronavirus. Scorpio is the zodiac sign associated with viruses. They are ruled by Pluto, and Pluto is associated with viruses. He also has his Scorpio rising is also at a critical degree, 22 degrees, and the ascendant is of course associated with the physical body, and it's strongly tied into one's physical health and potential debilitations that one may have. And another thing in his chart, what stands out to, he has Neptune in Scorpio in the 12th house, and the 12th house is a house of endings, and Neptune is associated with diseases. And the thing about this is too, and being in Scorpio can be one that might be relentless. But another thing, the thing that's really, some other things that stand out to me as far as his natal chart goes, he has Pluto conjunct his Sun in Virgo in his chart. Now, Pluto, as many of you may know, is associated with death, and it's also associated with viruses. And when you have Pluto conjunct your Sun, there can be greater susceptibility to viruses, other things Pluto related, which of course could be issues with the bladder, the colon, bladder, colon, and just there's and prostate as well. And being in Virgo, this is something that he probably is likely going to be analyzing and trying to, I don't know if we want to say dissect, but Virgos, of course, can be very analytical. With his Sun in Virgo and Scorpio rising, it wouldn't surprise me if he was into like analytical, psychology. It can, but another thing that I've noticed too is when, excuse me, thing that people have to be careful when they have Pluto conjunct their Sun. I've noticed some tendency, it seems like there's a greater propensity for dying at an earlier age than many other people. Patrick Swayze had his Pluto conjunct his Sun. He died of pancreatic cancer. He was a Sun in Virgo. Many of you may have remembered Amanda Todd, who was involved in an infamous suicide. And I think she had her Pluto conjunct her Sun, and she died at a relatively young age. I don't know if she was like 15 or 16 or something, but she was very young. when she passed away. And the thing about another thing as well that I'm seeing in this chart is that he also has Jupiter in Pisces, and it's in his fourth house of the end or latter part of life. It's also conjunct the fourth house cusp of the latter part of life, and he also has Chiron very in Pisces, very close proximity, not too far from his Jupiter, very close proximity to it. Now, Jupiter in Pisces, even by itself, I mean, Jupiter can exacerbate and enlarge things. This could be, very big, issues with diseases. Pisces can be about diseases that can't be eradicated, in this case the coronavirus. And keep in mind, Jupiter is in his fourth house, the end or latter part of life. The fact that it's conjunct Chiron can give more suffering in connection with it. He also has, at this time, he has transit Neptune in his fourth house. And Neptune can be about diseases. Pisces can be about ones that can't be cured or eradicated, and is currently in his fourth house of the end or latter part of life. So he needs to be a little bit more. I mean, this is something that has to be taken very seriously. Now, I understand the morbidity rate is rather low for this, but because of his astrological placements, Chris Christie is at a little higher risk rate than the average person. And keep in mind, because in astrology, out of the way, given his age, the fact that he's 58 years old, coupled with the fact I do believe he is overweight, and it's not to be derogatory or derisive, I'm just making based on my observations of him. And another thing too is what he has at this time as well. He has a transit North Node in Gemini is in his 8th house, it appears. And the North Node can be, in transit, can be about issues one may have to address and confront. And when you're talking about the 8th house, it can be life and death issues with the virus. Gemini can be associated with the respiratory system and the lungs, breathing. So he's undoubtedly, I believe he's going to have issues connected with that. The transit North Node right now, I believe, is also in conjunct his Scorpio ascendant. And in conjuncts, of course, can be about health-related matters. Now, another thing too is that with transit Mercury closing in on his natal Neptune, that could be manifesting issues that could be about the dissolving dissipation of breathing. But I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, Mercury is actually going to be going retrograde actually in the near future as well. I don't remember the precise date on it, but I don't think we have much longer to go in that. And collectively, many people may have more breathing issues at that time, because Mercury is associated with breathing. And when you have Mercury going backwards, it basically will be apparent backward motion, the retrograde motion of Mercury. I see that as manifesting in perhaps issues where people will be having more trouble breathing than usual. We are not far, as far as flu season goes, we're actually at least getting a lot closer to it at this point in time as well. And there's really, not much more, for me to, as far as state. I don't think as far as, the transits and natal placements that may be tied into Chris Christie testing positive for the coronavirus. But I did notice that it appears to have Jupiter is also opposing his natal sun, which is certainly not helping matters in terms of Jupiter being in Pisces in his natal chart. It could be enlarged issues with diseases that can't be cured or eradicated. But he also has, it looks like he has transit Neptune, but it looks like perhaps a loose conjunction, very loose opposition to his natal sun at this time. And the thing is now, is looking at looking at his chart, sadly, he definitely, I mean, it's he definitely is at a higher risk, I believe, than the average person at this point in time in terms of something perilous, being connected with is him contracting the coronavirus. And it's definitely something that has to be obviously considered. And some other things I've noticed too. He does have Taurus on the cusp of his sixth house in his chart. That could be Taurine health-related issues. That could be something like with a sore throat or coughing or just general aches near the I should say at the throat and neck area. He also has transit Uranus in Taurus in his sixth house of health at this time, and that could manifest in something that happens very shockingly. That could be health related, and he may have some issues with the coronavirus connected with his throat neck area. Again, something like or it could be something with coughing, something where could be some pain in his throat and neck area. Coronavirus symptoms can be body aches. So having the ruler of the sixth house conjunct his 12th house cusp is an indicator of health restrictions that at some point that he would be dealing with. And really, there's not much more for me to state as far as transits and natal placements associated with what is going on in terms of his contracting COVID-19, the coronavirus. Another thing that I'm noticing too, he does have Jupiter square his moon in Sagittarius, so hopefully he's not going to have too many distorted emotional reactions to this. And Sagittarius, the moon being in Sagittarius, maybe especially, can have very sometimes exaggerated emotional responses. I mean, don't get me wrong, moon in Sagittarius can also express a lot of jocular, very happy feelings. He has this in the first house, and at least on an unconscious level, he may be actually very positive. And his feelings may be very positive and feeling very upbeat and optimistic in terms of trying to, to beat this. And the first house is the house of the self and the physical body. So anyway, just trying to see. Well, there's also he has Mars in Cancer in the 8th house in his chart. So that could be a lot of battling with a lot of tenacity, some virus related issues. So anyway, people, one other thing I wanted to state, he has transit Pluto in his 2nd house right now. And Pluto, sadly, unlike Saturn, Pluto can obliterate and destroy. And it might be, I hope it's not destroying his self-esteem and self-worth, and especially that this is in despondent Capricorn at this time. And this is, these are things, this coronavirus is obviously no joke, and it's something that people are going to have to take seriously. Another thing that I'm seeing right now is that he also has transit Sun conjunct his Mercury. So that's an indicator. You have transit Sun hitting your Mercury. That could be communication of a physical related matter. I think he was, I don't know 100% if he was at that social event that they were talking about that Trump was at. I think it was on Saturday, but it wouldn't surprise me if he was, because the Sun is currently in transit. Sun, of course, is in Libra right now, and Libra can be associated with things that are connected with, socializing, social gatherings, and so anyway, people, it's really about it. Oh, one last thing again. One of the rulers of Chris Christie's 4th house of the end of life is in the 12th house of restrictions, and that's Neptune. So that is something to take to take note of. And anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.